What is going on, y'all? It is the Caveman. I'm back here with Football with Oz for episode 17 of Against the Blitz, and this is going to be a jam-packed episode. I mean, like, stuff to the brim of free agent and trade predictions going into the week because the tampering period and the free agency window officially opens within the next, couple days. So we're going to try and get in the most relevant predictions that we can. And we're going to track how they do throughout the course of the next 7 to 10 days. And that's going to be fun to do. I want to ask, Austin, based on the number of names we have, what percentage of correct would you consider good?
If I could get a quarter of these guys, I'd feel fantastic. Because, obviously a lot more guys are going to re-sign with their own team than we put. But that's so boring. If I just have half these guys going back to their original team. So I tried to be a little far-fetched and hope that a few hit. I think a few will. I feel pretty good about half of these.
I think it's more fun to swing for the fences and hit the home run than it is to hit a single, hit 3 singles.
Yeah.
So, all right. The way we're going to structure this is just by position. This is kind of the easiest way to do it, most likely. So we'll just go through it. Position by position and touch on some of the bigger names, of course, but some of the deeper names as well, the deeper cuts for the sake of fun, I guess, if that's what you want to call it. We kind of got a little sick with some of the names we got into here, but hey, that's part of the job. So we'll start with quarterback, of course. And we might as well, I guess we can start with the biggest free agent name, Sam Darnold. After the shakeup with the Geno Smith trade that seemingly came out of nowhere, Sam Darnold's top landing destination shifted to Seattle, and I decided to stick with it. I mean, I felt like I'm just going to listen to the media and stick with the popular choice there.
I am too, but the only reason I did is because I actually originally had him as a Raider. That was my landing spot, so I'm just going to flip it. Because he no longer has that chance. So he is a Seahawk to me. I think that I actually love the fit too with his former OC. So we'll keep it there.
It feels like they have no choice. It's like if it's not Darnold, they're fucked. So that was my other thought.
Yeah. Seeing the rest of this list, yes, they are.
And considering where they're drafting, 18th, you can hope and pray that Shedeur falls the way that people are seemingly guessing he might, which is still weird to me, But yeah, they're fucked if they don't get Darnold. So Seattle will be the team making a strong push for him. The second best option, at least in my opinion, is Justin Fields. I decided to go with the Jets. It sounded like, from what I was picking up on, they were very interested in Justin Fields. They like his athleticism. They think he'd be a good fit. It is the complete opposite of what they had last year. But I feel like Aaron Glenn is kind of trying to do that on purpose. He's trying to completely rebrand things over there. And based on what I was reading, Justin Fields is their top option.
Yeah, I actually also picked the Jets. It seems like a lot of people think he's staying in Pittsburgh. But I mean, I'm thinking of his mentality. They just benched him after he won a bunch of games. It doesn't really feel like they're that committed to him. And he's just another quarterback. But someone like New York might be actually really committed for him to be their QB1 of the future. So I think that he should go to a team that would value him for who he is. And I think New York would do that.
Yeah, for sure. And I think at this point, Pittsburgh is seemingly playing hardball too, from what I'm understanding. They're not necessarily in the greatest position to be leveraging anything on their end. So if they're not going to give him a contract before the free agency window opens, which it doesn't seem like they're going to, they're screwed too. So they're going to be cooked as far as the Justin Fields opportunity goes, because other teams are going to make a stronger offer for him for the reasons that you also mentioned, for how he feels. So,
right.
Yeah, I also had Justin Fields to the Jets. Let's be different this time. Aaron Rodgers. Where is Aaron Rodgers going on your list?
I feel like he's a Giant. That's where I feel. I feel like they're the only team that doesn't really get to be picky. I guess they could go Shedeur, but he's not really NFL ready to me. So they just need a guy. I don't think that any free agent would want to go there except for him. So I'm saying Rodgers.
Rodgers. I went with the Steelers because they do miss out. They miss out on Fields, and once again, a team that's not in a position to necessarily end up with a quarterback if they lose out on Fields, I mean, I'm not sure what else is out there. I don't think they're going to be interested in bringing Russ back. It's kind of going to be like they have no other choice. And I think, well, I'll save that thought for later. But Rodgers kind of will end up being the only choice they have. And we know that this team isn't in the market of settling for a rebuild, I guess. So this is in their minds their best opportunity to compete again for shooting for the stars. So I have Rodgers going to Pittsburgh with Mike Tomlin, which another locker room debacle that would be.
They need that.
Well, Kirk Cousins is a guy that I also threw on my list, and I don't think he's going anywhere. I had him staying with Atlanta. It seems like the Falcons front office is okay with keeping him as a backup. I know he met with Arthur Blank, and he kind of made his wants and needs known, but Blank is like, we're going to do what's best for the team, buddy. And it seems like keeping him on the team as a backup, which they've said is something they're fine with, will ultimately be what happens. So I have Kirk staying home.
I think he's cut post June 1st, and I think he goes to the Browns. I think they'll get their quarterback in the draft, but they'll want a veteran that they don't really have to pay too much for. I think that the Falcons would only save like $1 million if they cut him now, but they save about $28 million this year if they cut him post June 1st. So I think they should do that. And then Kirk would fall to the Browns, who are like one of the only teams left that would need a veteran quarterback if they're going after a rookie.
I guess we won't get into this can of worms too much, but I would assume that you don't think Cam Ward will be there at 2 for them in that case.
Even if he is, like I think I actually feel pretty strongly they're going quarterback now that they just brought Myles Garrett back. I don't think Abdul Carter is there. So I think that they're doing Cam or Shador. Like I think they're cool with either at 2. And they're guaranteed to get one of them unless they trade back. So I think they'll go rookie quarterback and then a vet to kind of mentor him.
Gotcha. All right. Well, we'll move on to Russell Wilson. This is another guy that I had a very hard time deciding. Like this is one of those quarterbacks we were talking before the show, and some of my choices for guys ended up just being a result of other decisions I made, and Russell Wilson was a casualty of that. I had him going to the Titans. I don't think that they are going to be confident rolling into the season with the Will Levis, Mason Rudolph combination again. I know Mason's already a free agent himself, but they'll be okay with Levis as long as they feel like they have something that they can turn to again. And Mason was fine, I guess, but Russell, at least, he started relevant games for a decent team over the last year, and he would be, in my opinion, I think he'd be pretty good for Calvin Ridley too, for what it's worth. But I had him going to the Titans.
I thought about them, and then I thought about who the Steelers are. So I had to bring back Russell Wilson to the Steelers because it doesn't matter what the fans want. They had Matt Canada for like 2 seasons longer than he should have been there. Like it. I almost put Rodgers, but then I remember Deshaun Elliott like crashing out at the idea of Rodgers going to the Steelers. So I was like,
I missed that. I missed that.
He put like a whole post out there about how like he would be so upset if Rodgers came to the Steelers. So I was like, I don't know if I can do that. So I think they stick with Russ because that's just who Mike Tomlin is. That's who like the Steelers are for some reason. I don't think that they're going to be like that willing to go get Fields for some reason. And I think it's tragically going to be Russ again.
Yeah, I wish I would have seen that because I probably would have changed my Aaron Rodgers destination. But yeah, I don't know. I just for some reason thought like if they were not going to re-sign Fields before the free agency window opened, I would figure that they would just do Wilson before it opened, and they just haven't done either, which
they haven't.
To me, tells me they're not interested in either of them. So I guess I went with what was left. But yeah, you're right. I mean, if it's not Rodgers, then they're gonna have to go to Wilson. So.
Yeah, they're not getting Darnold or anybody. Like they're not getting these guys.
No shot. I had a couple other names that will likely be backups, but that I felt like were interesting enough to touch on. Marcus Mariota, I had him going to the Colts. From what it sounds like, he wants an opportunity to start again. And Chris Ballard at the Combine was saying that the quarterback room will be a competition, quote unquote. I don't think they can bring in somebody that is definitively better than Richardson to the point where it's like, why are you starting Richardson and not this guy? But it's also a player that, will kind of make Richardson maybe work a little bit harder in the offseason and kind of make it feel like someone's on his ass constantly. And I like the fit. Another mobile quarterback that can work behind that offensive line. So I have Mariota to Indianapolis.
I actually thought about that, but he ended up just being another casualty of running out of spots. I had him staying with Washington just because of how injury-prone Jaden Daniels projects he might be with how skinny he is and how bad of hits he takes. I think that one of his best shots to start is a Jaden Daniels injury. So I have him staying in Washington because he played really well in the brief bits we saw of him in that offense. So I think he should stay and just be a good backup.
Yeah, that is true. I mean, between both Washington and Indianapolis, one of those morons are bound to get whacked again. Like Richardson, it's already happened to Richardson a bunch too. Yeah. I didn't even think about that. But yeah, I mean, one of those guys, the way they play football, his chances are high.
Yes.
Daniel Jones, though, this was tough. Daniel Jones was somebody I saw a lot of people projecting to Indianapolis. Yeah. I have him staying in Minnesota. I feel like it would be dumb for Minnesota to let him go. I see a lot of Rodgers to Minnesota. That would indicate to me they really don't feel like McCarthy's ready, which would be odd, I guess, unless he's still hurt. But somebody that is familiar, someone that I'm confident Kevin O'Connell could work with. And, he's not your starter, but you can play him if you have to be. So,
I have him staying too, just because I think that, I don't know if you can jump in McCarthy and another bad quarterback. I think you'll need McCarthy and a guy that can play a little bit, just in case, he's not up to speed, just in case it's not perfect. I think Jones could actually be decent in Minnesota. I think he can have one of these, not Geno Smith level, but Geno Smith type revivals where he just needs a new system. So I actually really love him to stay. I think that he would actually put up good numbers, weirdly enough.
I agree. I think it would be bad practice for either side to decide that they didn't want to be together anymore. I think that I think this is best case scenario for both of them. So I find it weird that people are thinking he's going to leave. I have three other quarterbacks that I guess I'll breeze through quick.
Same.
Jameis Winston. I know that you had Aaron Rodgers going to the Giants. I have Winston going to the Giants for a similar reason. If it ends up being Shedeur, if you don't want to start him, Winston's your guy. This organization, no one wants to watch them right now. At least Winston brings some character. At least it makes people maybe want to watch their highly volatile performances if he's starting. So I thought that was a good one. I had Mac Jones going to the Niners.
Ooh.
Kyle Shanahan was on the brink of drafting him over Trey Lance back in the day, and he didn't. And they need someone to fill that backup role again. And they just had Darnold, who was that Shanahan tree type quarterback. Mac Jones is the Shanahan tree type quarterback. And then I had Brissett back to the Commanders.
Okay. Yeah. I actually thought about bringing Brissett back to the Commanders. That was a cool one. Similarly with Jameis Winston, I have him going to the Colts as a mentor for Anthony Richardson, because he needs someone like that can come in and throw for some yards. Jameis Winston had a few games last year, where he made you open your eyes a little bit. So I got him being a Colt. I have Mac Jones as a Dolphin because Tua cannot stay healthy for the love of him, and they need a higher quality backup that can play within structure. They don't need a Tyler Huntley that can just scramble around. They need somebody that doesn't suck at throwing the football. Mac Jones does not suck at throwing the football, so I have him in a similar Shanahan-y type of offense with McDaniel. And then I have Brissett to the Jaguars. As just a team that I just think that's the best team that needs a good backup quarterback. So his was just kind of another one of them where he just fell in line as a team that needed a backup if Mac Jones is gone. Yeah. I'm not with the Brissett starting vision anymore. So I think he's just a good backup.
Yeah, I think I had to let that dream die. I was definitely on board prior to the season. I will let it go regretfully. Yeah. But talk about not a scheme fit. Tyler Huntley to the Dolphins was the worst fit of all time. I hate when people say the whole not a scheme fit thing, because teams will try what they think will work regardless of what it looks like from the out. They'll try anything if they feel like there's a chance.
Yeah, they'll change their scheme if the player's good enough. Tyler Huntley just wasn't good enough, and they did change their scheme, and it just got worse. Like they couldn't run the ball or pass the ball. It was terrible.
Oh my god, that was the Dolphins' offense was a fireable offense for a good period of time while Tua was hurt.
That's why I'm like, I feel like Mac Jones can operate that to a degree, like of decency.
Yeah, I agree. I at first I was like, but then yeah, you're right. I think Mac Jones, as long as he's not being goofy, which I feel like he just goes out there and doesn't give a fuck. At least that's what it seemed like when he was with Jacksonville. He was just kind of messing around. But I talk about a guy that could probably be a starter still. I think Mac could probably be that.
Yeah, I actually think he could be.
So we'll move on. Yeah, I mean, I won't say it. I think he could give Brock a run for his money. Running backs. We both had Aaron Jones to the Vikings. Yep. He did re-sign prior to us recording, so we'll skim by him, and we'll move on to J.K. Dobbins, who walked out of Los Angeles, and I have him walking into Dallas. Yeah. I think Rico will be a little bit too rich for them, and J.K. Dobbins will. Let's put it this way. I think J.K. and Rico will probably project around the same market. I think J.K. just being a new face, being somebody that isn't necessarily looking to demand a backfield the way that I get the sense that Rico is. I feel like Rico's looking to be the main guy, and I don't think he will end up being in Dallas anymore. So I like JK there. He'd be willing to split the backfield with somebody that they decided to bring in. And I do ultimately think he'll end up being cheaper than Rico.
I mean, yeah, with his injuries and Rico had 1,000 yards, fully durable. I like that, but I had him going to the Browns for J.K. Dobbins. I think he gets to go home to where he went to Ohio State. I think there's already a huge fan base of J.K. Dobbins fans there. He gets to come into a team that I think is losing Nick Chubb. So I can't see Jerome Ford start more football games. J.K. Dobbins kind of fits that mold for me.
I guess I'll jump right to Nick Chubb because I think you broke Browns fans' hearts a little bit with that one. I feel like, well, granted, I did make this prior to Myles Garrett signing his extension, and I was thinking if he goes and then Nick Chubb also goes, Browns fans will be crushed. They can't handle that. So I was like, if they have any sort of interest in their fan base, they will keep the one guy around that embodies Cleveland football that they all love. I still feel like at the price tag he'll command, it's still very likely. So I'm going to keep him there. But I'm interested to know where you think he's going to go if he's not staying.
This is me trying to read Jerry Jones's mind. I think Jerry Jones I think he cares more about having a big name than a good player. And that's why he keeps bringing Zeke back and getting him touches for some reason. And so I think that Nick Chubb goes to the Cowboys with a chance to kind of start. I'll probably invest in an RB2 and kind of just rotate those two. But I think it kind of gives Nick Chubb a fresh start with hopefully can stay healthy. And Jerry Jones, he just screams Jerry Jones to a T. So I had to pick him there.
After missing out on the big names last offseason and getting scolded for it, now he can say, "Here, I got this one. I got Nick Chubb now. See, look, I did it. I did it." It's like you're a little late with your big time signing. I like that. I did contemplate it for a second.
Yeah.
Another one that I had this is one of my locks. There are very few locks that I feel like I'm this confident in, and I have Najee going to the Chargers. It just feels like it makes too much sense. Greg Roman running a ton of power runs. A guy like Najee Harris, he loves churning out 4 or 5 yard carries. We were talking about him with Nick on the last episode. He just feels like such a Greg Roman type of running back, and it doesn't sound like Najee's going back to Pittsburgh. I was mulling the idea of the Raiders, but I think Greg and Najee just would be a match made in heaven. So,
yeah. I never even really thought about the Chargers because, in my head, they're such a lock to get, a running back in the draft. But I think that Najee would fit what they're looking for exactly. It just didn't come up in my head for some reason. But I do have the Raiders as my team, as just a guy that can just eat touches and just get beat up and keep going. Like they thought they had that in Zamir White, did not happen. And then we saw the like Amir Abdullah experiment and the Alexander Madison experiment. Like they need a guy that started before. So they get that in someone like Najee Harris. Pete Carroll loves to just power run the ball. I like that fit, but I do like him as a Charger a lot.
Don't forget the Sincere McCormick game.
He was the best one.
He was by a mile.
He was really good. Yeah.
Oh man, what a dumpster fire. I had for the Raiders on that note, that's where I had Rico going.
I like that.
I felt like this was all draft dependent, and the Raiders, in my opinion, I feel like have the luxury of going in whatever direction they want right now. And that would make me lean running back on one hand, but on the other, I still feel like that range is lower on their list of needs. It would be more of a luxury selection, but I think Rico could be an efficient enough guy that can, receive as well as run the rock pretty hard. I mean, he was shockingly a physical back toward the end of last year, like out of nowhere.
Yeah.
So I don't necessarily see it fitting what Pete Carroll likes, but I think for the sake of having a guy that can be their starting running back and they can bring someone in the later rounds of the draft, I think it would be a good backfield.
Yeah. Yeah. Honestly, on a similar note, that's why I like him to the Steelers. I know some people might not think it's like a scheme fit, whatever, because like he's not what Najee is. Like he's not the same running back. But I think that they've been trying to make Najee something he's not. Like last time we were talking with Nick, he was talking about how they've kind of transitioned to like an outside zone kind of running scheme. I think when you have someone like Jaylen Warren that can like bring the pop as like a power runner and a pass blocker, I think Rico is kind of the opposite running back of him in a way. So like that's kind of why I like his fit there.
Not a scheme fit.
Not a scheme fit. No one is. No one is.
Yeah, I don't know. I just, a lot of outside carries, not physical, not
not a scheme fit.
No.
Can't happen.
Not happening. Trade him, first round pick.
Yeah.
This is another one I'm very confident in, and I'm not going to call it one of my locks, but this is my last one also. But I love this. I love this fit. I have Davante going to his division rival in Kansas City.
Oh.
Yeah, I love this for multiple reasons. Davante I feel like he's transitioned from the type of back he used to be. He was a very physical, hard to bring down runner. Nowadays, I think people look at Davante as almost more of like a passing down kind of guy, which is odd. Like he's a very good pass protect. He's very good in pass protection. Yeah. He can catch the rock. Like I think that's kind of what the Chiefs need after, they're going to be losing Samaje Perine. I think also Kareem Hunt is a free agent. So he kind of is like both of them in one. So it feels like it just makes too much sense because of how bad I think they need a pass protector. And he's probably the best one out there as far as I can remember.
I mean, if Kareem Hunt's gone, like that's what his role was. So like, why not just slide in Davante, who should not be expensive? He like is not getting carries, and he hasn't for like 3 years. So, but I still think he's a good back. I just don't think he was quite utilized to how Javonte Williams is supposed to be. I do view him as an RB2. I do like him in KC, but I have him in a similar way on the Panthers. Like he gets to go back home to Carolina, kind of where his stomping grounds are. And since they lost Jonathan Brooks, I think they're going to need a guy that can back up Chuba Hubbard and kind of play a pretty opposite role of him. And this is me saying that Miles Sanders should be a cut candidate. Like I think that he should be. Like he costs too much money for like what Miles Sanders has brought so far. So I think Javonte should just replace him as the RB2.
That guy is still in the league, like crazy.
Yep. On a team, getting paid good money.
I forgot about him. That's one of those guys you see on a slideshow in like 2025.
Yeah.
Like the
Panthers, Miles Sanders.
2025 right now. Holy fuck. Like 2030. We're on like whatever the new iteration of TikTok is. And it's like, remember this forgotten player. It's Carolina Miles Sanders.
Yeah, I'm glad I forgot. I'm glad to have forgotten that.
All right. If you had no more running backs, right?
No, I'm all good.
All right, we'll get to offensive line. We're chatting a lot of guys, so we'll try to skim through this one.
Yeah.
Semi-quick. Cam Robinson was who I'm going to start with, and I have the Patriots throwing him a fat bag.
Yeah.
They desperately need a tackle. I mean, they're probably at the top of the list in terms of teams that need an offensive tackle after Ronnie Is it Stanley or State?
I've been saying Ronnie Stanley my whole life.
Stanley, it is? Okay. After Ronnie Stanley took a little bit of a discount to stay in Baltimore, they're just going to go to the next man up. As far as I know, Cam Robinson is that next best option, and he's going to slide right in. I think the Patriots are going to sling some cash around this offseason, and it starts with Cam.
I do have them soon, but not here. But I have kind of similarly. I have Cam Robinson to the Chiefs because they have not. Who do they have? They have like Kingsley Suamataia as their left tackle right now, and they lost Joe Thuney, their guard, who was playing tackle, so they're in desperate need.
Yeah,
it sounded like both of those two teams were the ones in the running for Ronnie Stanley. Like it was Chiefs or Patriots, and no one else. And then the Ravens find the money to bring him back, so they're both screwed. And they're both going to have to get a pretty mediocre left tackle in this pretty mediocre free agency class. But I'll just go right next to it. I have Dan Moore as my Patriot, who's a level down from Cam Robinson. Not last year, actually. Robinson was terrible, but I expect he'll be better. But I have Dan Moore to the Patriots. It feels like a Patriot move, at least of the last few years, where they don't spend all their money for some reason. I think they'll fix the other part of the line in the draft and then just get a mediocre left tackle.
Yeah, I have the flip-flop. I have Dan Moore to the Chiefs.
Yeah.
And now that I think about it, they do like Cam Robinson just feels much more like a Chiefs tackle, and Dan Moore feels just so much more like a Patriots tackle. But I honestly, I think more of it was I was, looking on Kansas City Twitter as far as I could get into it, and it felt like that was the vibe I was getting, that it would end up being Dan Moore. So
it makes sense.
It does, yeah. Ultimately, I would be willing to bet that these two guys end up on one of these two teams. It really comes down to it for both of them. But this next guy is a very interesting case, and one of the best free agents available, being Will Fries. What happens with Will Fries? I stuck with the boring old traditional re-sign in Indianapolis. I feel like they'd be dumb not to bring him back. I know from what I understand, the big up in the air decision is him or Braden Smith, but Braden Smith, I don't know. I couldn't figure out why he missed football last year, but he missed a lot of time for some personal reason.
Yeah, Braden Smith hasn't played a full season of football since Black Panther came out. I don't know what's wrong with him. Since 2019, he has not played a single full. I think he's played one full season since then. So I feel like he should be the biggest cut candidate on the Colts. I don't know why he hasn't been cut yet, but yeah, they should prioritize Will Fries over him 1,000 times over.
Yeah, I agree, and that's funny. I didn't know it's been that long since he's played a full.
It's been forever. Yeah,
but I do feel like like you said, they should be prioritizing him. And Gon, I can't say that guy's last name. Goncalves. Matt
Goncalves, yeah, Matt Goncalves, yeah. I guess that's how you say it.
Yeah. He'll slide in. I think he could slide into right tackle more than whoever the guy they have in projected to start at guard if Fries doesn't come back. That would be a mess. I can't remember his name.
Danny Pinter, probably. I don't know.
Yeah, something like that.
Somebody.
But you can have arguably the best guard duo in football behind Anthony Richardson and a good running back. So why would you not prioritize that?
Yeah, I think they should. I think that another team will outbid them. Yeah. And I have the Seahawks as the team with the most abysmal looking interior offensive line I have ever seen in my life. So I think if you're going to get rid of all of your team's favorite players, at least do them the decency of bringing in a good one in your biggest positional weakness. So I got Will Fries as fixing the Seahawks right guard spot.
Yeah, now that I see my list, I did them horrendously dirty. I don't have a single guy going to Seattle. So.
They're getting Anthony Bradford. That's what they get.
Look, in my defense, that's the direction it feels like they're heading right now. They just want to
100%.
blow it all up and sign the worst players they can find just to suck next year. The next guy, though, that I had was Tevin Jenkins. I had him originally going to Miami. I was reading that they were interested in him when he was coming out in his draft class, respectively. But I changed my mind, and I had him going to Arizona instead. I pivoted primarily because I just started following him recently, and I don't remember his name, but he's like one of the most well-respected offensive line like Twitter guys, for lack of a better term, that I know of, and that's where he had him projected. And I thought about it, and I'm like, you know what? For whatever reason, that feels better, so I just switched it.
Well, I mean, I think they're losing Evan Brown, who played guard for them last year too.
Yeah.
So that would make a ton of sense. Like, they need to be able to run the ball better. That's what Tevin Jenkins does well. So I do like that. I think actually a lot. I think I actually did the Cardinals dirty in this. I guess I assume they're drafting one. I don't know. But yeah, he's one I picked for the Bengals, because there's been like a decent bit of like buzz for him in like the Cincinnati Twitter area, and they need a new right guard since Alex Kappa is gone. I don't think Cody Ford, who was signed 20 minutes ago, is intended to be a starter. I think he's intended to be depth, like he has been. So I think that Tevin Jenkins is probably like the best blend of affordable but like pretty good still.
Yeah, I agree. I think I was for Cincinnati. In my mind, I'm thinking he won't be expensive, but he will be slightly more expensive than maybe they'll be comfortable with, because of who knows what's going to be happening with everything else with that team. Yeah. But on that note, I also don't know if he's going to be any cheaper, but I had the Bengals going with James Daniel instead.
That's fair. Yeah.
He can, probably play guard, but he's a guy that can, he could plug and play anywhere. And that Cincinnati offensive line, I feel like at any point could need somebody to do something.
Yeah. So right guard, played right guard. That's all he needs. Yeah.
So I felt like James to Cincinnati was my best fit there.
Yeah. Yeah. I had him. I mean, I would love to have him. Yeah, please. But I had him on a similar team that needs a right guard. I have him on the Lions, who are losing Zeitler. I mean, unless they have Christian Mahogany as their starter, which he might be. I actually really like him as he's like a hard-nosed run blocker in Detroit. So I felt like that fit felt good, but predictably probably not going to happen.
Yeah, the Lions. Yeah, I also don't have the Lions on here. Interesting. I feel like there are so many teams that need an interior offensive lineman. Like,
yeah, I mean, there's 3 spots. Like, most teams outside of like Philly, who actually does need help if Mekhi Becton's gone, like most teams need at least one of them.
Yeah, or maybe even 2.
Yeah, most guards can like flip flop too. So like, you could put anybody to any team.
I think part of my struggle with picking guys too is like the draft. There's like not many in this upcoming class. It's like a pretty scarce interior offensive line group. So it's like these free agents. This is like the best time to be a free agent interior offensive lineman. Like, it makes these guys so valuable. And with that said, a team that needs an offensive lineman on the inside desperately is the Texans. And
yeah,
they just let go of Shaq Mason, and we were talking about what his future should look like. Retirement home was mentioned. Jail, retirement home,
prison. But lock him up and throw away the key.
Poor Shaq, man. I actually have him here too. But for the Texans, I went with Kevin Zeitler. I think they absolutely need to keep prioritizing running the ball, because CJ Stroud just can't keep dropping back and getting whacked trying to throw the ball deep down the field. So I think they want to continue to be a team that is able to take those deep shots, and being able to capitalize on them will be best if you can run the ball. So I think Kevin Zeitler will be a very good veteran presence as well on the inside for a very weak and inexperienced and untrustworthy unit.
Yeah.
They just need that type of leader on the inside. So I went with Zeitler there.
Yeah. I'll touch on Zeitler and the Texans. The Texans, I didn't actually put anyone down here, even though it's a huge need, because I've only been mocking them guards in like the first 3 rounds of the draft. So I guess in my head, I'm like, oh, I got that figured out. They're getting Tyler Booker and Gray Zabel. Like, in my head, they're already on the team.
Yeah.
So like, that was just, I, for some reason, also didn't give them a free agent guard, I guess. But Kevin Zeitler, I had him as an Eagle. I think that this gives them flexibility to draft like whatever developmental guard / tackle player that they want. And then Zeitler can just fill in, who's playing like a top 10 guard in the league. And he wouldn't be that much because he's like 34 years old. So it's like the perfect mix of him being affordable enough, being good enough, and they only need him for 1 year. So like, most teams can't afford that, but they can. So I feel like he actually would work so well run blocking in that offense.
That was kind of, I think, my train of thought for Houston. It's like they could bring in Zeitler, whether he, assumingly he's there for a year. They could bring in somebody that their luck with rookies lately has not been great.
No,
So
terrible.
whoever they bring in could at least sit for a year before going in. But that would be so unfair. Just throw another top 10 offensive lineman on the Eagles, and all of a sudden say Saquon's going to be ripping off even more 50-yard carries if Zeitler goes to fucking Philly.
Disgusting.
My Philly departure candidate, Mekhi Becton, I did not have him going back to Philly. I had him going to Los Angeles with the Chargers. Ooh. I another guy that I think fits what Greg Roman likes to do. Very physical brand of football, very big guy, and he can go ahead and plow the way for Najee Harris. But I felt like that fit was pretty good. I don't think he's returning to Philly though.
No, I do think he stays in the division though, and I have him as a Cowboy, which has had like a lot of traction here recently. And I mean, obviously, when one of the best offensive guards in history in Zach Martin retires, you kind of have to scramble and get a guard pretty fast. So like, again, another kind of splashy free agent pick that just screams Jerry Jones all over it, except for last year. Yeah, but like that's usually his bread and butter. I feel like that's just something that they can do.
Yeah, the one thing the Cowboys usually have going for them is the group up front, and it's kind of getting a little shaky, but that would help staple things down. With that said, another group that's typically one of the best in the league, but has been a little bit weak, at least this past year, was the 49ers. And I think one of their biggest needs is center. And I know the Bears are the heavy favorite to land this guy, but I got Drew Dahlman going to San Francisco. I think Dahlman would be great at commanding from the inside, and that's kind of what they need from their center in that offense. And I think they will be a lot more aggressive toward him than I think Chicago fans are anticipating. It sounds like people are acting like Dahlman's already in their building in Chicago. And like, he's not. Like, let's get this straight.
No,
he's not. So
he's the best one available, but like Ryan Poles can only do so much. I also don't have Drew Dahlman going to the Bears. I do have a different team, but it's the same idea of a like kind of spread out offense where the center might have to be able to run, like how Drew Dahlman can. So I have the Jaguars with their new offensive mind in the building in Liam Cohen. Mitch Morse just retired, so they're in desperate need of a center. And there probably isn't one in the first round that makes sense. And the rest of them in the draft kind of suck. So like I feel like they need to really, really prioritize this in free agency. So it's like him and Ryan Kelly are like the only two big ones for them that they can get. So I got him as a Jacksonville Jaguar.
That's a good one. I forgot that Mitch Morse retired. And I don't have the Jaguars acquiring an interior guy, so that's not good. But I went with
figure it out.
Speaking of Ryan Kelly and speaking of the Bears, I do think they still, of course, have to prioritize it, and they'll have to settle. I know Bears fans will be devastated, but I think they'll have to settle with Ryan Kelly.
Settle.
They can't get every top free agent out there, despite their popular belief. But Ryan Kelly, I did have going to Chicago if they miss out on Dahlman.
I have the same. I don't think he's been pretty injured, and he's a lot older than Dahlman. So I feel like he'll be a lot cheaper than the best center on the market. I don't think that they can just afford every good lineman out there. As you were saying, Bears fans seem to think they're getting. Ryan Kelly still fits perfectly into like what Ben Johnson had and Frank Ragnow as a center. They're actually very similar. It's just that like Ryan Kelly's been hurt, so he wasn't himself. But if he's fully healthy or like 88% healthy or better, I really like him on the Bears, like a lot.
Especially after the interior that they've built up next to him. I mean, that would be a very strong group on the inside. So yeah, I thought Ryan Kelly to the Bears was a very comfortable one. Mm-hmm. So move on to tight end. I think we only have, at least I only have two guys.
I have two, and I like them both.
So we'll start with the recent cut in Evan Ingram, and this was interesting because to me, Evan Ingram reminds me at this point of his career, he reminds me so much of Darren Waller prior to going to the Giants. It just feels so like, older tight end with high receiving upside that people are thinking is going to be a great addition for any quarterback, any young quarterback, but ends up kind of sucking ass. I don't know if he's going to, but Darren Waller was a terrorist. So,
oh my God,
Ingram, I don't think will be quite as bad, but I do have him going somewhere to kind of help out a quarterback that needs it, and that's to New England. I know they have Hunter Henry, but they play a decent amount of 12 personnel, and Henry is usually playing out of the slot, and that's kind of what Ingram is that big slot. So I think they could just, hey Hunter, just go play, over there instead, and he'd be fine with it. And Evan Ingram could be there to help out Drake May, which I think would be, a big slot for him, just like Henry, just better to some capacity. So that's what I had there.
Yeah, I mean, after Mike Gesicki just got signed, like Evan Ingram is far and away the best available. Austin Hooper's up there, who I forgot to put down here, but yeah, I have him as a Bronco. I think like going from the words of Sean Payton, where they're looking for like a slot mismatchy type of tight end, and they didn't really use tight ends a ton, so like he doesn't really need to be like an 85% snap share kind of guy. He can kind of just sub in on packages and just be like a big slot mismatch. I really like him doing that role for the Broncos, so they don't have to invest in like a Harold Fannin in the second round.
That was kind of my hesitation. It's like every single mock draft was tight end.
I
I'm
know.
like, all right, well, they're going to do it, so I'm just going to keep them off.
That's fair. Yeah.
So, but that does, I mean, it's obviously one of their biggest needs, and that makes a lot of sense. I just was like, if these guys all these Broncos heads are saying they're going tight end, I guess I won't force it. But with that said, another guy that I was so close to putting in Denver, but I didn't, is Mark Andrews, who I know is a cut candidate for you. I don't know if he's going to get cut. As of right now, it would have to be a trade, and I have Mark getting shipped off to the lowly New York Giants. And
oh, no.
I feel so bad about, now that I think about it, I feel terrible. But I just think his time is up there. It really feels like his time with Baltimore is done, and there are not many teams that really need a Mark Andrews. I just didn't feel like – I feel like Mark Andrews could serve whatever role they're going to be looking for Theo Johnson or Daniel Bellinger to fill, and they have the capital. He'd probably be like a 5th-round pick.
Yeah,
guy,
nothing.
So. Yeah. Sorry, Mark.
Yeah, I was a little nicer to him. That's just kind of bullying to send him there. No quarterback. It's just like, here you go, buddy. That's like a Darren Waller type of thing.
Yeah,
like send a 30-year-old tight end to it's worse than Daniel Jones. We don't even know who they have. Aaron Rodgers to Mark Andrews in the works, but
Jameis Winston to Mark Andrews.
Oh no. But I was a little nicer. I picked the Chargers. So he gets to go back to his old OC, also Roman, and a team that, as we saw in the playoffs, has abysmal tight end play because of Will Dissly and like Hayden Hurst, who disappeared off the face of the earth. Like, if you're going to be a rushing team and not have receiving weapons, like why can't you just get a good tight end?
Mm-hmm.
Like it doesn't make sense why that's like the position they failed to attack, and it obviously showed because their playoff game tight ends were horrendous. So like I feel like they could invest like a 5th-round pick into Mark Andrews, and I feel like he'd be a really good starter there.
Yeah, I was close. That was what I was gonna do, but then I was reading that it sounds like Harbaugh is 100% gonna be drafting Loveland. So
it feels that way if he's there. Yeah,
like he's gonna want his guy. So I was like, all right, fine. Where else can I shovel poor Mark off to? Because I just don't think he's gonna be a Raven. So. Yeah, that makes sense too. I was close. All right, we'll move to the fun group of guys, the wide receivers. There are a lot of names. This is a rich class of old men that at one point were better than they are now.
Yeah.
And that might not be true, though, for one of the best free agents out there, quite frankly, Davante Adams.
Mm-hmm.
And this was kind of what I was going to spoil earlier, but I have Rodgers going to Pittsburgh.
Oh.
Davante, why don't you join him? They need a receiver. They've been aggressive trying to get one for the past season or so. And it just feels like Davante, I know we talked about it in the Steelers episode also. Davante had some very positive things to say about Mike Tomlin and being interested in playing for him if the opportunity came to fruition. So I don't think Davante will ultimately follow Rodgers if he goes to like a New York, for example. But if he ends up in Pittsburgh, I think the likelihood is very high. So
Yeah,
where I had him going.
I think he should go to a team like that where he doesn't need to be like a high volume one. Like they have someone else for that, and he can just kind of just cook some poor rookie in like man coverage, and he can come off the field like on a team that runs the ball a lot. But that's kind of why I like him on the Rams. I feel like at this point in somebody's career, they always go West Coast for some reason. Like once they're tired and old, they just go West Coast. And if they're getting rid of Cooper Kupp, I think they can bring in a guy who I think is like a good bit better than him at this point in his career. Like let Puka do all the dirty work and just let Davante Adams just destroy some innocent little slot corner's life. I feel like that's just like a good scheme fit for them.
Yeah, Davante with Sean McVay and Matthew Stafford would be nasty work. Would be nasty work. I'd be excited to watch that. That would be like another second round pick on Davante. I'm still taking him that high in fantasy.
Oh no,
I'm still taking him that high if he's with Matthew Stafford. But this guy I'm not drafting. Period, because I hate him. Stephon Diggs. I still don't like the guy. I think he's going to go to Dallas and rot with his brother. So That's really it.
That's also really it for me. Like Jerry Jones is, like I said before, like the only owner that would be super cool with a terrible locker room presence, just because he's a big name. He would bring in views, and he used to be with his brother. So Cowboys make a ton of sense. I didn't think of another team for them, honestly.
Yeah, me either. I was like, Diggs, oh yeah, I'll just throw him over here because he's
brother.
That was really it.
Who cares? Yeah.
So, a guy though that has been vocal about where he wants to go, and I kind of disregarded that, even though I read it.
Same.
I for Keenan Allen, he has said that he probably wants to either go back to Los Angeles or play with the Bears again, but I was like, I don't know. I just don't think that's going to happen for some reason. So I have him going to a team that really likes to sign these older, used to be good receivers that still could use a slot presence right now that just can't really figure it out. That's the Ravens.
Yeah.
I think Keenan Allen is definitely at the end of his rope. I don't think him going to the Chargers really does much for them. I just don't think that would work out. And for the Bears, I feel like they would have brought him back by now. So I was like, you know what? Who's a team that typically would be acquiring a guy like Keenan at this point of his career, because he feels beyond everyone else in terms of age. He's just the oldest, I think.
He's always been the slowest one, but he had like other redeeming qualities, but now he's just old too. So yeah. I did take into account his words. I thought you were talking about somebody else. I did take into account his preferences. And he's not a Bear, so I just picked the Chargers because he feels much more likely to be a Charger than he is to stay a Bear at this point. Like you said, they haven't re-signed him, and I don't think he really fits what Ben Johnson does at all, especially at his age and how freaking slow he is. So yeah, I just have him as a Charger by default, pretty much.
Yeah, I think that was what I was gonna do, but I just couldn't get past like the conflict in my mind of Keenan and Ladd. Like it feels like having to play Keenan out wide that much more would probably be a little bit problematic. And having Mark leave the Ravens, they're probably going to need something underneath that could win like consistently for Lamar. So that was, I think, my thought process with that. Chris Godwin. What the hell happens with Chris Godwin? Who do you have? Where do you have Chris Godwin going?
I feel so strongly he's a Patriot in my brain. I don't know why. I feel like they have so much money to overpay him that like he's not gonna. It's gonna be like an offer he can't refuse. Like there's so many teams that he would kill it on, but I'm like, who's a team that has a good young quarterback that would be intriguing, has no receivers like at all, and like has like infinite cap space to just throw at him. Like I feel like the Patriots of all teams could do that for him.
They were
finally the receiver one.
Yeah, they were up there for me. I was thinking like kind of what you said. What team could, maybe get the most out of him and give him the most opportunity to flourish, just like he has been these last couple of years. And I feel like the answer was right in front of me, and that was with Tampa. I think it's boring. I know it's boring, but ultimately, I think Tampa has a track record of keeping their best guys in house. Like Davante David is consistently re-signing there. Mike Evans has consistently stayed there. The guys that have become like real household names, they always find a way to keep. And I think Chris probably will become another victim of that, even though obviously Cohen's gone. So maybe the offense takes a direction that he doesn't like. But for right now, I would say it's safe to assume he's going to continue on an upward trajectory, assuming he's healthy. So I just kept him in Tampa.
Actually, similarly, I had a very strong Jaguar thought for him after they lost Christian Kirk, and they're bringing the coach that unlocked the best version of Godwin we've ever seen. I was like, oh, wait a minute. They actually need him, and he would kill it there. So I'm like, huh. But I stuck with my Patriots. I already wrote them down. I didn't feel like changing it. But it's definitely a thought of mine.
That was what I was going to do. And then I remembered Cooper Kupp existed. So I was like, okay, I'm going to keep Godwin in Tampa, and then I'm going to put Kupp with Jacksonville because I did not know where else to really throw Kupp. So he kind of was a casualty of not knowing what to do with him because I had Keenan going to the Ravens. I had Diggs going to the Cowboys already, which seems like an option, and Godwin going to the Bucs. So I'm like, all right, I think Liam Cohen would be fine with not being able to land Godwin if he can get Cooper Kupp, and it feels like he's the best option to serve that role right behind Chris. So that's where I had Kupp getting traded to.
That's also where I have Kupp getting traded to officially. It just feels perfect with Christian Kirk being gone. Like you were saying, he can kind of play in that Godwin-ish role that he did so well with Liam Cohen in last year. And I don't know. I don't think there's much of a market for him. Like he's been on the trade block for like 2 months now, it feels like, and no one cares. So like someone like the Jaguars that like is in need of something new, I feel like they would be willing to do that.
That's very true. Like it came out that they were looking to deal him. Everyone made a big deal about it, and then everyone forgot.
Yeah. Like Myles Garrett was getting trade talks even yesterday. Like everyone cares, but Cooper Kupp, who was in trade talks like the exact same day, has been completely forgotten about.
Well, Liam Cohen will probably revive him if he ends up with him on his roster. But another guy that I am very, very confused about where he might go is Amari Cooper. I put him down as a re-sign to Buffalo at first. But then I was like, it just really doesn't seem like that's going to happen, even though I feel like it makes sense. So I was thinking of another team that could use a wide receiver one, even though I don't think he's going to be that at this point of his career. And I think he understands that. So he has to go to a room that has help. But I also think the team that wants him is going to be kind of looking to cheap out as far as the wide receiver one options go. And I went with the Packers. The Packers, like, they obviously have been in talks for a top option over the last few months, but it still feels like they have a good group of young guys to where it feels like bringing in, to me, a DK Metcalf it might disrupt the flow that they have going on over there. But Amari Cooper, being familiar with the Bills offense, the everybody eats mentality, the Packers follow that exact same mantra, and he can probably slide in and serve a role that the Packers are looking for, instead of bringing in a guy like DK, who I think kind of would be a little bit loud for those guys over there. So that's where I have him going.
I agree with that. Yeah, I don't have him there, but I do like that fit. Like I don't think he's a wide receiver like one per se, like we saw in the Bills. It's just like he can bring that kind of presence and like that kind of like ridiculous route running knowledge that like I don't think that there is in that room. So I really do like that. But I have him being pretty reasonable this offseason. I think he knows what he is at this point. And that might be like a legitimate wide receiver 3 on a good team. I don't see him getting a ton of snaps. So I have him as a Lion because I think that Tim Patrick leaves for a bigger role or try to be a bigger role. And I think that Amari Cooper can kind of just slide into a contender, which I feel like he's been looking for so long, which is why he wanted to be a Bill in the first place. So he can kind of just be a wide receiver 3, exist among Amon-Ra and Jameson Williams, and just run routes. Like that's all he has to do is just be who he has been forever.
Yep, just exist. He just needs to go somewhere where he could just exist, not be relied upon that much. And I think both of those situations kind of do that for him.
Absolutely.
Perfectly. So Amari Cooper to Green Bay, Amari Cooper to Detroit. I did not think about that one. That's an interesting one, but I like it. Brandon Cooks was another guy, obviously not as big of a name, but I still think is relevant enough to talk about. I almost had him going back to Dallas, but still another kind of like Amari, where I felt like it made sense, but it just doesn't feel like things are trending that way. And unfortunately for Chargers fans, I think this is going to be your big receiver acquisition of the offseason as far as free agency goes. I think a guy like Josh Palmer probably was kind of trying to be that field stretching presence, and he really wasn't. I think Brandon Cooks could be the best version of whatever they were trying to get out of Josh Palmer. So, yeah, that's where I had Brandon Cook going.
I like that. I think he's going to be pretty dirt cheap this offseason, considering I don't know how old he is, but it feels probably really, really old for a receiver. I had two teams down in my head. I have one being the Texans as just like a very temporary Tank Dell replacement. Since he's hurt, they just brought in Christian Kirk, so I don't think that they're going to invest too much else into the wide receiver 3, but they need one. And then also the Browns, who are probably losing Elijah Moore this offseason. I don't think he's coming back. So having like another kind of wide receiver 3 next to like Cedric Tillman and Jerry Jeudy would kind of be fun.
Yeah, that's a good one. Elijah Moore, I did not have him on my list, but I was thinking about where he could end up. And I think I don't know. I don't remember what I decided.
I didn't put him either. Yeah. Jail also.
Yeah, jail. Throw him in jail, lose the keys. Brandon Cooks to the Browns/Chargers. And another guy similar to that is Tyler Lockett, who I want to bet we both have going to the same place. Raiders.
Yeah, I have a Raiders, but I had a close one.
Who else?
I had Chiefs before Hollywood came back, because they just love getting a random veteran receiver every season. But now that Hollywood's back, the Raiders are my 99% likelihood team.
Yeah, I think so too, just to pair back up with Pete and Gino.
Mm-hmm.
But a guy that ultimately pushed me, well, actually, we'll go back to the Chiefs veteran that was just released or just is walking now, is DeAndre Hopkins. And I had him, another team that I unfortunately don't think is going to be making the splash at receiver in free agency that people might think they will, is the Panthers. You know, he went to Arizona when Kyler was young, and he was their guy for that. And then he ended up in Tennessee with Will Levis. Like, he kind of has been that for teams as of late toward the end of his career outside of his time with the Chiefs. And I guess he can kind of, once again, provide that same stability, quote unquote, for Bryce Young, even though he's a bit older at this stage. So I have Hopkins going there.
Yeah, I had to pick a team where like I don't think that he can be relied upon to be a starter. And I do think he's going to be pretty cheap. But you might not like this one so much because I think he's actually a Buffalo Bill. It's terrible.
No,
I hate it. I don't want to.
Anti-scheme fit. Negative.
Absolutely anti-scheme fit. But it feels like Buffalo gets like one extremely questionable free agency signing every year. They'll have a ton of good ones, and then they're like, okay, we're trading for Amari Cooper now. And you're like, whoa. What are you doing? Like, it feels like the exact same font that the Amari Cooper trade was in. They always got, there's like a Marquez Valdez-Scantling, and there's a Matt Collins. Like every year, you're like okay, this doesn't really do much for you kind of pick. And I feel like that's D-Hop, but that's like a $3 million D-Hop. I don't think that they'll sign him for any money. I think they're getting like a practice squad level price D-Hop.
I fucking hope
I don't
so.
like that. I don't like that. No.
Oh man. I mean, I hope you're horribly wrong. My dog also agrees, is very upset with that with that prediction. Well, speaking of Buffalo though, I have Darius Slayton going to the Bills, and that'd
be interesting.
My second to last receiver, but I think they so desperately need someone that is actually good down the field. Like, they don't have that. Like, it's their number one need right now. Keon, I've been a Keon hater since he's been like born. So sorry. Darius Slayton is going to be, I think, that guy. I think this is one of the most underrated, I will say, deep ball guys in the league. He just has not had a good quarterback playing with New York for forever. So his opportunities have always been very, very not good, we'll say, to be nice. So I think Josh Allen could give him a lot of shots down the field, and I think it would be exactly what we're looking for. So,
yeah. I mean, that's like in a perfect world of like of actual scheme fit. That would be if predictive, like if best case scenario, I would love that. I have actually a very similar idea. I have him as a Charger, or like another quarterback that like just desperately needs a deep ball threat, and like that's his archetype. Allen and Herbert are deep ball throwers at heart, and they don't have good deep downfield receivers. Neither of them do. So I love him in Buffalo, and I love him as a Charger.
Yeah, I
Especially
like
like
that one.
he's a perfect contrast to Lad McConkey, in my opinion.
Yeah, very true. That kind of like with Shakir too. It's like the same exact
Yeah.
picture that we're painting.
Yes.
With that said, there's one big name that we left off. I did that on purpose. Is DK Metcalf, and whatever happens with him, the report just came out that the Seahawks have lowered their asking price to a second round pick. Oh, I wonder why that's the case. And it also came out that he's looking to play in warm weather, supposedly. I'm not sure what type of leverage Seattle and DK think they have to be like, I want to pick and choose. It's kind of like whatever the best option is, you're going there, buddy. Like, sorry.
Yeah. No.
And I felt like, speaking of a team that we've talked about throwing money around, throwing capital around, I think the Patriots would be foolish to let this man slip through their fingers. Like, this is the exact kind of receiver that you go and get when you have a quarterback like Drake May, a young project that just that whole blueprint of finding your number one receiver to pair with your young quarterback. This is exactly the opportunity to do that. And if they let that slide, I think that would be extremely foolish of Vrabel and company. So this feels like a lock, one of my locks to me.
They're my number 2, and that's only because I already picked Godwin. But if the opportunity presents itself, yeah, like the Patriots should go after DK Metcalf. Like their receiver room is so bad. Like they should do whatever it takes to get anybody. But I have similar mindset, but a different team where they're at now. I have the Panthers. And it's another team that has a young quarterback with like very questionable outside receivers at the moment. I like Thielen, but he's not really an outside guy to me anymore. But like the Panthers, like they're not in position to draft a receiver really because they need so much help on defense. So I feel like one splash trade, like their early second round pick could be enough to get DK as their wide receiver 1.
Yeah, I think that's ultimately going to be, it'll be like a second, maybe another piece thrown in there. Yeah. But given the contract that's going to come along with him, that's obviously going to bring down the trade capital, the draft pick capital, I should say, as well. So, yeah, I think it's got to be one of those teams. It has to be the Patriots. It has to be the Panthers. Like, it has to be one of these teams that is in dire need of a top guy. Like, I don't think Buffalo's in this conversation. I don't think they can compete with the offers that these other teams can give. So, yeah, if it's not the Patriots, it's definitely the Panthers, in my opinion. But that brings us to the defensive side of the ball. And we'll start with the edge rushers. And this is a pretty okay class of guys that you can get your grubby little hands on. Speaking of grubby, I have Jonathan Gannon and the Arizona Cardinals matching back up with old fella Josh Sweat. I think Arizona is, of course, just dying for somebody that can get after the quarterback. And Josh Sweat, having played with Jonathan Gannon, I felt like it was a plug and play.
Yeah, I had the same train of thought, just a different player. I had Hassan Reddick going to the Cardinals, but I do have Josh Sweat going to the Panthers. It's just another team that is similar to Carolina, loves to blitz and like loves to attack, but their edge rushers suck. So like you kind of pick your poison there. Josh Sweat needs to go somewhere where he has an opportunity to like be the edge 1. And I think that he can do that on both those teams.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of Hassan Reddick and connections, I have him going to Atlanta, another team that is in awful need of pass rush. They were in talks prior to 2024, prior to the Matt Judon signing or trade, whatever that ended up being back then. So I think they kind of rekindle the flame, and that's where Hassan Reddick ends up going. I thought he should have been a Falcon like 3 different times prior to the year at the deadline. It's like they were sitting with their thumb up their ass doing who knows what when they needed an edge rusher so bad. And so maybe they've finally woken up. So,
yeah.
Moving on. We have, we'll just get it over with now. Do you have Joey Bosa going to the 49ers?
Yeah, it's boring, but like it has to happen. Like they need that kind of player, and he can play with his brother. Like it's literally the perfect fit.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like from reports too. It seems like they like already are working on a deal, and it'll be done when the window opens. So
Right.
even though it's not
Yeah.
legal, but you know what happens. Khalil Mack, though. Now, I saw a lot of people saying he might just end up going back to Los Angeles, but I feel like that was, boring. And I also thought, well, I'll wait on that because that's kind of like my big thing for this entire podcast. I have Khalil Mack going back to Chicago, though. I think the Bears fan base has been very vocal about a lot of what they want. Khalil Mack and that connection is one of those things, and I think this is actually a realistic one. They could throw the money at him that a lot of other teams can't, and at his age too, I think he would be happy to play with a team that he feels gives him a good opportunity to win. So I think at this stage, the Bears are as good as anybody ceiling wise to compete in the NFC. So I have Khalil Mack going back there.
It feels like a Ryan Poles move, doesn't it? Like just aggressively going after a former player of the team. But I had a different answer, but I had to change it today because of news that happened. But I had the Browns before because I thought like he was like a fun little like 1 year Myles Garrett replacement. They kind of like the same look to him, like the same kind of style of play. Garrett's just much better at it, but
yeah.
Because of that, I'm gonna send him back to the Chargers. I think that they cleared a bunch of cap space, getting rid of Bosa, and I think that there's just like they need somebody now. They can't lose Bosa and Mack and then have like nobody left. So I'm gonna send him back to the Chargers for like a 1 to 2 year deal.
Yeah, I was gonna do it. I'm like, fuck. I have a better idea. So I guess I'll touch on that now. After the big signing by the Browns, like $120 million guaranteed for Myles Garrett, or was it? I think it was 90 with an injury guarantee
Something
of
dumb.
120. But regardless, like an amount of money that no non-quarterback probably should be getting, if we're being honest. But it was insane. And it makes you think, guy that has been compared to Myles Garrett for a majority of his career, somebody that we talked about in our last episode, TJ Watt. It has never made more sense to trade TJ Watt. Like I don't want to hear.
I agree.
I don't want to hear the he's a longtime Steeler, the family, the foundation, the loyalty bullshit. This is a business. You have to do what is best. This team is in. It's time for a rebuild. They got to tear it down. The value they would get in return for TJ Watt would do them so much more than TJ Watt will in the next 2 to 3 years, or however much longer he'll be remaining there. With the contract that it looks like they probably will have to give him, it just seems stupid.
God.
Just for the sake of being like, yeah, you're a good guy and you've been here forever, so we're gonna pay you. It's like, no. Cut the shit. Do what's actually best for your organization's future and send him off. So I decided what team could compete with one big piece like this, and that was the Chargers.
I like that.
I was thinking if the Chargers had a premier edge rusher and Justin Herbert had one more receiver, even if it was just Brandon Cooks, or if it was a top tier guy, I really think this team will be money. And the Chargers defense last year was good enough to win them games. If they get a guy like TJ Watt, they would be one of the best units in football, like they already were. It would be one of those moves that puts them at the top of the AFC, and I would do that in a heartbeat because they have the cap space to pay him.
Yeah. Well, I was not super prone to trading TJ before Max Crosby got traded, before he got signed. Then I'm like, okay, 35 is going to really screw with every edge rusher that tries to get signed. And then Myles Garrett gets signed to 40, and I don't think that they should even come close to paying TJ Watt that. So if it comes down to anything within a few million of that, you do trade him. Because 40 is unrealistic. That's irresponsible to do with your money, to pay that to one edge rusher. So I love the Chargers. I wouldn't mind sending him back home to his hometown in the Packers that have no pass rush, apparently. Like I was looking into their pass rush stats. They can't get home. It's so weird. It's like I would like him to go there, but I love the Chargers.
Yeah, the Packers were another team I thought about, but I don't know why. I think I ended up deciding the Chargers because I think they would be more willing to pay. And I think that was kind of why I was like, all right, well, if they're going to settle with Brandon Cooks, they have to do something else with their money.
Yeah.
So that's where it all went. But speaking of actually trading big time edge rushers and guys that will likely be on the move, Trey Hendrickson been the talk of the town. Cincinnati has and their old school ways of screwing themselves, quite frankly. I would consider this one of my locks as well. This is my third that I'm locking in, and I would be very upset if this doesn't happen. I can't imagine a universe where the Bills don't end up with Trey Hendrickson. It makes absolutely no sense, given the state that this team is in, that they would not end up with this type of edge rusher. We don't need him to stop the run, which is something that I know people talk about when it comes to Trey and him being average, below average, whatever. We don't need that.
Yeah.
He just needs to get after the fucking quarterback. Throw him a bag to do that. I don't care if he's 30 years old. You need 2 years of it, and that's it. That's what you paid Von Miller to do. So why not just trade and pay? Yeah, and now that disaster's over. So you're saving money there. Trade and pay Hendrickson to do that. It just feels like it just makes too much sense. And I would be very upset if he gets shipped off somewhere else and they get the big time edge rusher instead.
I do have him going somewhere else. And it was just because of the luxury of having a QB on a rookie deal. You can do stuff like this. I have him going to the Commanders. And apparently, I don't know how true any of it is. Apparently, they've already kind of been in talks with the Commanders pretty heavily. Their edge rush sucks. They have like Cleveland Farrell right now. He's a free agent too. Like Dorrance Armstrong. Are we excited about that? Like they need somebody bad. And I had the Bills at my number 2, but after seeing Greg Rousseau come back on like a pretty hefty contract, it's like I don't know how much money they have left. Yeah. So I was like, you know what? Send him to Washington. They don't have to pay Jaden Daniels for a while now. Like they can spend 35 on an edge rusher and just let him play. Especially let him get after Jalen Hurts. Yeah.
It seems like the Commanders are like in talks for any edge rusher that is remotely decent.
All the time.
They're at the top of the list, and for good reason. I mean, they have the money and they have the need. So they're definitely going to be Buffalo's biggest competitor if they're even kicking the tires, which Brandon Beane better be, I swear to God. But you give us DeAndre Hopkins and not Trey Hendrickson. Thank you. I appreciate the outlook.
I think I have another bill. I have a good bill coming later.
I hope so. But the only remaining edge rushers that I had were I have Chase Young. I sent him to the Ravens. I thought this is, kind of a cheap option. Yeah, I think they have Kyle Van Noy there still, like getting after the passer a little bit. So I was like, Chase Young could probably be a good fit. I had Harold Landry going back to Mike Vrabel in New England.
Yep.
And just to kind of throw the bad juju back your way, I have Azeez Ojulari going to the Bengals.
I'm cool with that.
Honestly. Yeah, which isn't the worst, but
no. As a rotational guy, I think he fits the new DC scheme, I guess. But I have I didn't even have Chase Young on my list just because like I am so low on Chase Young compared to like I feel like the world is. I feel like he could stay a Saint, I guess, if Cam Jordan is gonna be moving on this offseason. They'll have like him and like who else do they even have at edge rusher anymore? I don't know. It's not good stuff.
Yeah, no, it's not.
Like Peyton Turner, I guess do you count him as an edge rusher? I don't know.
I was gonna say that I feel like they have somebody that was remotely promising. Oh, Carl Granderson.
I guess they have Carl Granderson. Yeah, he's all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean I guess he just stays a Saint. Like it's super boring, but like I don't think any team's gonna offer him more than like a nickel. I have Harold Landry also staying or going to the Patriots. They need an edge rusher. Like it kind of just fits. I feel like he plays exactly like O'Shane Ximines, who they tried to get going at one point and it didn't work. And then I threw in Von Miller in here because I know that there is talk he comes back to the Bills.
I'm gonna cut you off.
What'd you get?
Jamie and Sherwood signed with the Jets.
Oh,
and more importantly, Davante Adams signed to the Rams.
Oh my God!
Holy shit! Wow, you called that one.
Well, I also had Jamie and Sherwood to the Jets, so I'm gonna take my 2 for 2. I'm gonna take that.
Wow, shit!
What kind of moolah is he getting?
I'm trying to see if they released the details yet.
So I think that we have confirmed your second round pick in this coming fantasy football draft. You are locked in to get Davante Adams.
I forgot about that. I don't know. I might have to revoke that.
No, it happened. The tape sees all, and I see the tape. I heard that.
Wow. Davante, Puka, and Stafford. Holy fucking shit.
Wow. Well, that works.
Yeah. Wow.
What if they just keep Cooper Kupp?
Holy shit. Yeah, could you
Let's have
imagine?
3 of them. Let's have 3 of those.
Wow. I had a feeling that we would see a couple of returns in terms of like re-signings, but I felt like we wouldn't see Davante go anywhere until the window opened. Is that legal?
I know. If you were released, you can. But
right.
if you're an expired contract, you have to wait till tomorrow.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes more sense. Wow. Okay then.
Yeah. Works for me. For me.
We were talking about like Harold Landry, and that happens. Wow.
I think I brought up like Von Miller was the name. Wow.
Holy
Good
shit,
stuff, Davante. Appreciate it.
2 years, 26 guaranteed, 46 total.
Oh,
wow.
I guess if he plays to his standard, then that's a good deal.
Yeah, they're going for it all now.
If it's Raiders, that's better than Jets' version of Davante Adams. I like that. I actually love that.
Yeah, damn. Wow. Good hit. A live hit. Look at that.
Already working. I love to see that.
A live hit is awesome.
Let's get another one of those. I would have had 2 if I would have said Jamie and Sherwood earlier. I do have him as a Jet, but
Patriots signed Harold Landry. There you go. Another hit.
That's another one. I'm 3 for 3.
They're rolling in.
Oh my God.
Sam Darnold apparently is getting strong interest from the Steelers also
don't do that. It's terrible for both of them.
Yeah. Yes, it is. That would be the most Steelers thing of all time, though.
That would be so ugly. Don't do that. Go to Seattle. Don't be weird.
Wow. Wow. That was huge. All right.
Yeah. Quick 3 for 3 off the bat.
Holy shit. That's crazy. Where did I have?
Hell yeah.
I had Sherwood going to the Rams, so that busts that.
I've heard a ton about that. I don't know why.
Yeah, that's what I was reading. I'm like, this seems kind of like popular, so I guess I'll ride it. But fuck me, then, I guess. Well, I guess we'll try to leak these out before we get any more busted on us.
Yeah, let's keep
defensive
going.
Tackle.
Pause. Yeah. Go ahead.
Defensive tackle. I only had 4 guys here. I went with Milton Williams. I have another, obviously the biggest defensive tackle free agent out there. I have the Patriots throwing a bag at him.
Fair.
I think they really talk about a team that needs help. Like I think they I don't know how much they gave Landry, but he wasn't the most expensive option out there. And then they go and get the bigger hitter on the inside. So that's where I had Milton going.
Yeah. Similarly to a team that just needs that player, I have him as a Cardinal. Mm-hmm. I think they're done with the whole Roy Lopez experiment. Let's actually bring in like a real name to start. So yeah, big fan of Milton Williams in that. Again, another Gannon scheme.
Yeah, that's right. I didn't think about that. Jonathan Allen, I have him going to the Vikings.
Okay.
They need help on the inside, and I was thinking about Buffalo, but I feel like they go with a cheaper option instead. So I went with Minnesota. I think they're going to go ahead and spend up there. They obviously are a team that loves to get after the passer. So
yeah, I put a team that does need to get after the passer, and that's the Falcons. Like I feel like they desperately need interior D line, but they need edge rusher more in the draft, so they should go to that and just pick up Jonathan Allen for like a year or 2.
Javon Hargrave, I have him after leaving San Francisco. I have him going to Pittsburgh. I think we talked about this last episode also. He was a former Steeler, if I'm not mistaken. So I just have him returning because they do need that help on the interior as well.
Yeah, I have him on a team he also used to be on, the Eagles. Just a very cheap Milton Williams replacement. Just kind of be depth. Like we've seen them get old dudes like Ndamukong Suh and stuff like in the playoffs. Like I think they're just going to get a cheap replacement in Javon Hargrave.
BJ Hill, a Bengal of yours. That's who I had Buffalo nabbing.
He'd be a good fit there. He'd be a really good fit there. I feel like in my head, Derek Harmon from Oregon is a bill in my head already.
Yeah.
So like I didn't even reach into the fantasy pool or the free agent pool because I'm like, oh, they got Derek Harmon, they're good. They got Ed Oliver and Derek Harmon.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have BJ Hill as a Lion.
Okay.
I think he gets to be next to his boy DJ Reader,
Mm-hmm.
and he fits their mentality perfectly. So, but I think Bills would be a great number 2 option.
Yeah, that BJ Hill and DJ Reader pairing up again would be fun.
Ugh.
Those were the good days of the Bengals defense.
Oh man, it was
when those two guys got to play with each other. Linebackers, though, we just talked about how Jamie Sherwood got re-signed to the Jets.
Yep.
The best linebacker available currently is Dre Greenlaw, and I was thinking that he might end up back with the Niners, but I kind of had them spending a bit more on guys like Drew Dahlman and Joey Bosa.
Yeah.
So I had him departing for the Broncos, who are in need of another linebacker next to Singleton. So I feel like he'd be a good guy to help command that unit next to Alex over in Denver.
Yeah. And he shouldn't be that expensive, honestly, because of his injury. It's a pretty significant one, but I think that he's still really good. So I have him as a Bengal, assuming Jermaine Pratt's gone. They're like desperately going to need that number 2 linebacker. And I think that Greenlaw can do that for like a fairly reasonable price. Like that's the kind of free agents they usually like to get.
Yeah, I agree. I think Dre, it will be interesting to see how he comes back from that injury because he was, him and Fred were, a dream linebacker combo. So it'll be interesting to see him A, without Fred, and B, how he plays, coming off of that, what was it, Achilles, right?
Yeah.
A guy that we've talked about previously that we both kind of thought would go back to the team that he plays for is Robert Spillane. I do have him returning to Vegas. Tyrell Dotson is another guy that I also have returning to Miami. It feels like they're big fans of Dotson over there for good reason. I mean, they brought him in and he was an instant impact player. So it kind of feels like they'd just be opening a hole unnecessarily if they let him go. The Cowboys, though, they're always in linebacker hell, it feels like. Ever since the prime days of Leighton Vander Esch, I think they've been spinning their wheels at this position. Eric Kendricks was their solution last year, if that's what you want to call it. And I think they kind of try to cheap out and go a similar route with another aging guy well out of his prime, and Shaq Thompson.
Yep.
He goes away from Carolina after his long time there, and that's where I have Shaq going. Are we lock and key here for the last 3?
We're 3 for 3 with the last linebackers. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Just keep it going then. We'll see what else we got.
Sherwood, I had going to the Rams. You had going back to the Jets.
I had a Jet. Yeah.
And then the last one I had listed was Landon Roberts back to Pittsburgh.
Oh, I like him as a 49er. So that's where I will differ. As like a second linebacker option. Fred Warner can play coverage all he wants. Roberts can just punish people. I have Jermaine Pratt as a Colt as my final one.
Okay. That would make sense going back with a Lou. Going back to Lou Anarumo. Okay, I like that. I was not sure how to interpret the Cole Holcomb restructure. I kind of thought that meant they would be bringing Roberts back, but I wasn't sure how to interpret it.
Because they play such a similar style that actually turned me away from it. Because I was like, they're both like the same build, the same play style. If they want to bring him back, they'd probably just let Roberts go, I guess. But I don't know. I have no idea.
Right. Yeah, I guess we'll see. Cornerback, though. There are a lot of good options in the defensive back room for this free agency class. Leading the way is Charvarius Ward, and I think a team that has been trying desperately to find a solution back there with a veteran this past year, with guys they've been drafting and they've been unsuccessful. This I feel like would be a surefire win in Charvarius Ward for Washington.
Yeah,
I think with Adam Peters, right? That's the fucking guy that went over to the general manager that went over from.
He was from San Fran to
Washington. Yeah. So I think him linking back up over there would be their best bet. I feel like that's something that they might not address as heavily as I think they will need to, but they certainly need to get Marshawn Lattimore. He can't be starting there again in the capacity he was after he ended last year. So Charvarius kind of relegates him from his duties a little bit and takes over.
Yeah. This is one that I did before this team paid a lot of people, but I had him as a bill actually. I really liked him being the whole Douglas replacement. I just can't watch Kyrie Irving play more football. Like they need a perimeter guy so bad next to Benford, and I don't like a revolving door. I think they should just get Charvarius Ward, but that was before they extended Greg Rousseau, and I think around the time they got Bernard, both for like pretty high money. So it might not happen anymore, but I still like his player fit on that team.
I would be fucking hyped about that. I would be so excited. Finally, you gave the Bills something exciting.
I was waiting on it.
The next defensive back that I have is Carlton Davis. It doesn't seem like he's returning to Detroit. He, and I quote, said, "I ain't settling for nothing," or something like that. I guess I can't say "and I quote," but he, I think, will end up on a team that is losing, I think, 3 defensive backs, or at least they have 3 free agents, and that's Minnesota. Carlton Davis, I think, will end up in the Vikings room since I think Byron is a free agent. I think Gilmore. Yes. Who's the third? Can't remember off the top of my head.
They're losing a safety in Cameron Bynum.
Oh, is that who it is? Maybe that's who I was thinking of. But yeah, they are going to be. They're going to need help back there, and I think Carlton Davis would be arguably the best defensive back that they've had over the last couple of years too. So they'll prioritize it and get Davis.
Yeah, I didn't actually have one for him, but if I actually thought of one, I'd actually like Tampa again, because I think that Jamel Dean should be another cut candidate. The dude barely plays, and when he does, he's not that good, and he's also like 30. So bringing back somebody, they finally have Zion McCollum that can be like the corner one with a bunch of length. Tampa's obsessed with like long physical corners, so just bring a guy back.
That is true. They are obsessed with long physical corners for some reason. DJ Reed, this guy, I think, arguably has a case to be the best guy on the market, and I have him going to the Giants. I think
I like that.
They are going to need to throw some money to this defensive back room if they want it to change. I mean, Deonte Banks had a good first half of his rookie year, and then he just kind of fell off. Have you ever heard that guy talk?
No.
I don't think he can put together a coherent sentence. I don't mean that in a mean way, but it's a tough listen when he's talking.
Damn.
They need someone back there to kind of be the brain, to kind of be the leader in that room, and I think DJ Reed could be exactly that. I mean, him and Sauce kind of always remind me of a top wide receiver duo, and Reed's always that one guy. You're he's a cornerback too here, but if he was anywhere else, he'd be the top guy.
Yeah, it felt like Randall Cobb at one point. When he was just dominant in Green Bay, he could be a one somewhere else.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think going to New York would be best for his pockets and that secondary.
Yeah, so I'll say. Go ahead, do your thing.
No, go ahead. I was moving on.
I was going to say, well, I have 2 then that kind of work with that. So I have DJ Reed to the Rams, which is a team they kind of it's kind of like a scheme fit for them too. They kind of like the undersized, scrappy corners, and I feel like he is everything that they've been needing. Their corners have kind of sucked since Jalen Ramsey left. I don't know how much more like Ahkello Witherspoon as your corner one you can take. So I feel like they should invest a little bit into their corner room. And then I also have Byron Murphy as my Giant. Okay. Similar mindset though, this kind of undersized veteran corner that just the Giants need badly.
My Byron Murphy move was him going back to Minnesota.
Yeah, that's fair.
I think from what I understand, he loves it there. It seems like he likes Minnesota a lot. So, and I just can't imagine they let all 3 of the free agents go. That would just, I feel be a recipe for disaster. So they go and pay for both him and Davis to come back, even if it is a little bit expensive. And now that I think about it, maybe I have them paying a little much, but oh well. Darius Slay. I wanted to send him to Pittsburgh so bad, but I didn't.
No.
But I didn't. And I had him going back to the team that he has already spoken many times about returning to, and that is Detroit.
I have the same thing. I that's not even written down, but I've talked about this before. Yeah. They're a contender. He obviously wants to play for a contender. Their corners kind of suck. He's pretty good. It's a perfect recipe of what they're looking for. So that honestly feels like one of my locks.
Yeah,
I have to pick one.
I think I'll add that to my list too. Now that you say it, just because of how vocal he's been and how it just makes so much sense.
Yeah.
But speaking of the Steelers, I think Nate Hobbs ends up being the Steeler. I was gonna go with Asante Samuel, but after we kind of talked about it last week, and I was seeing the vision with that. But then I was like, Pittsburgh doesn't always that feels like a big swing for Pittsburgh, and
yeah.
Now I'm being contradictory because I had them going with Rodgers and Adams, but I feel like in terms of how they address the secondary, it's never really a big name guy. I don't think, unless they draft him, of course. So I think Nate Hobbs fits the description of what they'd be looking for, a slot cornerback, like we were talking about last week. And Nate Hobbs, I think, is a little bit too disrespected. Like Nate Hobbs is. I think he played very good football a couple of years ago. I think this past year wasn't his best, but it wasn't really good for anybody, to be fair.
No.
So I think he would fit very well in that Steelers nickel role.
Yeah. I actually had Nate Hobbs being one of the Vikings guys that comes in. I think that he just fits everything that they like to do, like their attacking style of defense. Like you said, not the best year of this last year, but like we've seen who Nate Hobbs is. Like he's a good, solid corner. Mm-hmm. And I think that Minnesota has been elevating everyone's play so far. So, yeah, I love that. And then I have terrible news for my Steelers pick. I do actually think they get Mike Hilton, which would be terrible. He's already played there before. He seemed to really enjoy it, actually, when he was there. And like we were saying before with Nick, it's like they need a run-defending corner. He's probably the best one in the NFL. They don't really need much downfield because they kind of already have guys for that, which is like his biggest weakness. So he kind of actually fits everything they need.
Okay. So where did Asante Samuel go for you then?
Where did I have Asante Samuel? Oh, I had him as a Jet.
Okay.
I have him kind of taking over the DJ Reed role of like the kind of undersized inside-outside scrappy corner.
That feels so right. Like flipping Asante with DJ Reed feels so perfect, honestly. Mm-hmm. I like that a lot. I have Asante Samuel going to Green Bay, actually.
I like that too. He's also like a Jair replacement, maybe.
Yeah, literally. And I don't even have Jair on my list because I forgot he was even a trade candidate. Now that you mention it, I think they have said they're honoring. I don't know.
Yeah, it sounds like trade, that. I didn't even have him down at all, but I feel like I could come up with a name for Jair pretty quickly. Like that's a crazy one.
Yeah, I forgot that was even a thing. Jair Alexander. We are at 1 hour 32. We can talk about it another time. But for the safeties, we can fly through this one.
Just name them off. Don't even reason why.
I have. How do you say his name? Trayvon Moehrig.
I've been saying Moehrig. I don't know. That's just what I've been saying is Moehrig. I don't know what it actually is.
I have Moehrig returning to the Raiders. I do think he was drafted there. What 2021?
Sounds about right.
Around in that range, and he's never been excellent, but I think he's been enough of what they need back there, and he's not going to be expensive. I don't think.
Right.
So
no,
I like Moehrig returning. DeMar Hamlin, man. Where does DeMar go, bro?
Prison.
I didn't even write anything down for DeMar. I ended up leaving it blank. What did you have?
I just said Steelers because they need a backup safety because I don't view him as a starter anymore. That's just kind of my thing. Like I don't view him as much of a starter. They need a backup free safety. That's just where I put him.
Yeah, I was gonna do that too, but I'm like, I don't know. It feels too gimmicky almost because he played a Pitt.
But like it doesn't make sense for him to go anywhere else. I'm like what team am I just wishing this hate on to send him somewhere else? Like I don't know.
For what else do I have written down? I didn't have too many guys listed. I had Justin Simmons. I also had him returning to Atlanta. I think he's voiced that he wants to stay in Atlanta. I think that's what I read. So and that secondary needs help. I mean, even with Justin Simmons back there, they were an absolute mess. I almost had DJ Reed going there too, but I ended up going with the Giants. They need a corner. Speaking of it, though. But yeah, I had Justin Simmons going there. Hufanga. Where does Hufanga go? Who did you write down for Hufanga?
I had Miami as their Javon Holland replacement because I think he moves on pretty clearly. I feel like he's very excited to get out of there.
Yeah, Devon Holland. I think actually something I read which was interesting. Tyrell Dodson had more picks than Jordan Poyer and Javon Holland did combined after he got there.
I believe it. I mean, I was on Tyrell Dodson's case this season because the Seahawks fans. I've always been a fan. The Seahawks fans hated him because apparently he sucked there. I didn't really watch much, but he didn't fit their scheme and he was terrible. I'm like, no, I promise he was actually good. Like if you watch his Buffalo film or like if he goes somewhere else, he'll be good. And he actually played really well in Miami. So I'm glad to see him back. But yeah, I have Hufanga as a Dolphin. I think he just kind of works there.
I have Holland ending up with Jacksonville. Speaking of Javon, I know Andre Cisco is on the way out. So that's where I have Javon Holland sliding into. I was also thinking of Bynum ending up in Jacksonville, but I ended up having him going to Denver, I think was what I ended up writing down. Okay. So I have him going there. Did I have anybody else? No, I didn't. That was all I wrote.
I had Justin Reed as a Ram. They don't have any strong safeties. Their safety room sucks.
Yeah.
Javon Holland, I have as a Viking. I'd really like to see what they got because I think Harrison Smith's on his way out. Cameron Bynum's on his way out. I have Andre Cisco as a Bill. Actually, I really like what he can do for them. I think they need a free safety, like a legitimate, actual free safety. Mm-hmm. I don't know if Cole Bishop's ready for that yet, and it's not DeMar Hamlin. So a short-term deal with decent money to Andre Cisco sounds good to me. I have Trayvon Merrick as a Colt because it feels like Julian Blackmon's on his way out pretty comfortably. They're kicking him out the door. so Merrick can come in. I have Cameron Bynum also as a Bronco. And then Hufanga to the Dolphins and Hamlin to the Steelers.
Gotcha. All right. Well, that was a lot. There we go. That was a lot.
I better get all of these right. If I don't, I'm going to.
You are off to a blazing hot start, I will say.
God. I don't know if I'm going to stay up here.
Did you have Ernest Jones written down anywhere? Because he also resigned in
Seattle. I would say Seahawks, yeah. Because I've been talking to a Seahawks fan the past few days who has been so upset that he's not re-signed. Mm. So it felt like he was going to get re-signed, but I did not. I didn't write that down, so I don't get credit for
it. Yeah, right. You have to write it down. I'm going to screenshot this and then put the date stamp on it, so I can't be called a liar.
I'm thinking your Evan Ingram dream might
got busted. Yeah, I know.
Austin Hooper just got re-signed.
Fucking shoot me! Like really? That's your big move, your big first move, New England. Oh, I guess they got Harold, but
yeah, they did. Oh, 3 years, 43. Wow.
For Harold?
Yes. Not Austin Hooper.
I was going to say, what?
Austin Hooper's going to make like $15 million a year. Yeah.
All right. For the sake of your time and your ears, we will wrap it up. That was a lot to ingest and even to spew. So I hope that we're close to right. At least I'm not on the start. I don't have the strongest start going, but hey, I'm still going to be optimistic.
Hey, you never know.
We will be documenting this throughout the next few days. But if you enjoyed, as always, feel free to like, subscribe, comment, share. Be sure you're checking out Against the Blitz. All of the socials will be down in the description. Be sure you're following us both on our individual socials as well, down in the description. And we will see you guys in the next one.